You know, this is quite divisive, as I was told by the star of the movie. Uh, it's pretty weird. So, in a violent nature, it's a slasher film directed by Chris Nash, starring Ryan Barrett, who I interviewed recently on the channel. Go check it out. And the film is set into motion when a group of teens take a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods. They unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime. And the undead killer soon embarks on a bloody rampage to retrieve the stolen locket, methodically slaughtering anyone who gets in his way. And it's pretty good, and I'm going to give you guys my spoiler-free review for the movie now, followed by my spoiler review, so I will let you know when I'll be going into spoiler territory. But let's talk about this movie, because I've got a lot of things to say. So, as I was told, this film is quite divisive. I've been online the last few days looking at reviews for the movie since it came out on VOD, and not a lot of people are big fans of it, but not a lot of people specifically hate the movie. It's more somewhere in the middle. Which is good, you know? You never can have a perfect movie where you're not going to have someone who doesn't like it. You're never going to have a bad movie where you're not going to have someone who likes it. And that's very evident here, as I do enjoy a lot of the parts of this movie, but I also enjoy, a lot of parts of some other movies that aren't exactly the best, i.e. Toxic Avenger, right there. Good old Toxie right there. And this was told to me a while back when I interviewed Ryan Barrett, the star of the movie who plays Johnny the Killer, about a month back. So it isn't your typical slasher movie then, it's more artistic in a way.
Yeah, it's very different from like if you're expecting a typical Friday the 13th or a Scream slasher or Halloween anything. It's very different from that. But if you are a fan of those movies, it's kind of also made for you too because it's showing you the flip side of what happens what that we don't generally see on screen, and you kind of just sit back and go with the ride if you're up for going on this ride with this killer.
And is it really that bad? I'm not too sure. I do fall somewhere in the middle, as I do enjoy a lot of the film. I think the cinematography is bloody awesome, and the lighting is just makes the film look more vintage. It's phenomenal. However, I think there are a lot of issues with the movie. For one, the dialogue, it's horrendous. It's it's like supposed to be kind of like a throwback slasher, but the characters lean too far into being stereotypes of Gen Z and the current generation. And that's really evident in the dialogue when they're talking about cancel culture and like social media and things like that, and it was just painful. Like, I love a bit of social commentary in a movie, but this wasn't really social commentary, it was just kind of bad dialogue. And sure, you can look past that. It's still a really good slasher movie with a lot of gory kills and a cool villain with a really unique design. And that's really the only few issues that I had. It really lied too much into like a slocky Friday the 13th movie rather than like a new inventive slasher movie, because when you say things like that it's going to be divisive. It kind of sets a bad precedent, because that's the same thing that happened with a film like Halloween Ends, which, as we all know, absolutely no one likes. And sadly, I think that's sadly what's going to happen here, where it's a movie where a lot of people aren't going to like it simply because of how divisive and I guess a bit contradictory it is. You make a throwback slasher and have the characters be like modern day, like 20, 21 year olds. And yeah, if you just completely like look at the movie itself, the third act felt so rushed, and you can't really look past that because you won't enjoy the movie without a good third act. But when the third act is just a bit rushed and It feels like the last 10 minutes of the movie aren't even necessary. This would be a friggin' awesome movie if you simply added some better dialogue and removed the last 10 minutes. And right there lies the issue. I shouldn't be saying this at all. This should just be present. You should have characters who feel natural, not just like slocky stereotypes who you can't even relate to in the slightest because they seem so far away from what anyone is actually like that it just seems too much like someone's trying to say something here rather than like, hey, these are all idiots, let's just see them die for about an hour and a half. And I mean, even in the pacing, it's got a good few pacing issues as well. There's a lot of shots where it's just Johnny walking through the woods. Which, sure, films like Friday the 13th and Halloween have done similar things. But those were more, like, short. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the original Friday the 13th. I think it's entirely overrated, and I do believe that it had a lot of issues. But that in itself still like has some decent characters. You've got the main character and she's a good person who you want to root for, but with these guys you can't really root for them. They're just annoying. And yeah, as I said, you shouldn't be like saying things like they should remove the ending of the movie because it felt unnecessary. Because you're supposed to enjoy the movie. You know, movies are an experience, and I didn't really feel that excited with this. But I mean, I was really hopeful for it after I interviewed Ryan Barrett, and I have come out a bit disappointed. But then again, as everyone's favorite Gore fan, I find a lot of it kind of helps the movie. You know, you find these characters annoying. Let's chop their head off. In fact, not even chop their head off. Let's put a bloody Final Destination here. Let's go through their mouth with something and just take the rest of their body away and leave that to fall on the floor. Like, that's what I've been hoping for with this movie. Violent murders where you can just sit down, forget about anything, and just watch a load of idiots die. That's what I really enjoyed about it. It wasn't like about the characters, it was just about the murders. And sure, there's a story in there which I wasn't too invested in, but I think the character of Johnny is one where you have to feel sad for him as well. You can't just like, you know, watch this and just be like, oh, he's a murderer, oh, he's a zombie. And, like, you can't just be like that because he's just a kid still. If you think about it, he's still technically a kid. He was killed when he was a teenager, wasn't he? And like, I don't know, I find that really sad because he has such a backstory in this movie, which I will get into in the spoiler bit. But it was just sort of wasted, and I would have loved a bit more, just more of that. You know, do some flashbacks, do more, just to add to the story, other than like annoying characters. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're willing to watch this movie, please give it a try, as there's loads of redeeming factors to it. It's especially in like the kills. The practical effects are freaking phenomenal, and I think that it is one of the better slasher movies that we've gotten this year. So please do watch In a Violent Nature, and if you have seen it, let's get to the spoiler section because I've got a lot to say about the movie. And I really just want to go through it like beat by beat and just like talk about specific scenes in general. So yeah, let's get to the spoiler section. As I said, if you haven't seen the movie, you may want to click away and go watch it. If you don't care about spoilers, stay here and let's talk about some spoilers, because the movie begins with a group of friends out for a trip into the woods. They're seeking some adventure and relaxation together, and it takes an ominous turn when they discover an old locket hanging out in the remains of a fire tower. Troy, which is one of the characters, pockets the locket, and he is unaware of the consequences, because shortly after he takes the locket, the rotting corpse of this guy just bursts out the ground. Of course, we know him to be Johnny, but he's a long-deceased and vengeful spirit. And he rises from the ground, and he had died under a tragic and violent circumstance. He is enraged and he begins searching for the locket. As he moves through the woods, he encounters a rotting fox corpse, and he overhears an argument between two men about the trap that killed the fox, because basically this guy's like, you can't be putting all these traps here, there's going to be teenagers and college students coming in, and what if they get hurt, then that'll look bad on us, and, that's something which I kind of found interesting, because it is true. Like, that guy ain't going to be blamed, they're going to blame it on, like, the sheriff's department or something. But once again, it feels like the film's trying to say something there. And, Johnny then enters the house, and he mistakes a necklace for his lost locket, which triggers a memory of his father. The homeowner then returns, and upon seeing Johnny, he tries to run away, but Johnny chases him down into the woods, and he hits him a few times, and he then gets stuck in a bear trap, and he's killed by Johnny. Meanwhile, though, we meet our main characters. It's a group of friends who are sat around a campfire. Erin, which is one of the friends, recounts the local legend of Johnny. So, decades earlier, Johnny, who was a bit delayed, when he was in development, is how I'm gonna say it. He's the son of a local merchant, and he was tricked into climbing the fire tower of the local fire tower for a bag of toys. And at the top, someone scared him, which caused him to fall down to his death, which was ruled an accident. And according to the legend, Johnny's vengeful spirit is responsible for 2 series of murders decades apart. And after Erin's story, the group decides just to joke around, and this is where some of that really bad dialogue comes in, which I was talking about earlier, because they're saying, oh, there's another word for that. Oh, don't say that, you'll get cancelled. Please shut up. But yeah, the group goes inside their cabin, and Erin steps outside, and he's killed by Johnny with a hacksaw, where it goes through his... They pull a Final Destination, basically. The hacksaw, it goes through his mouth all the way to the back, and it separates the top of his head from the rest of his body, and it is brutal. But yeah, Johnny then drags Erin's body to a nearby office, where he collects a pair of hooks, an axe, and he grabs an antique firefighting mask. And this mask is very cool. It's definitely a different design for a horror villain, which I do enjoy. This is something different. It's like the rest of the film. It's different, and that's what I really do enjoy. The next day, though, Johnny encounters Aurora and Brody on a lake dock. Brody wants to swim while Aurora leaves to practice yoga. And as Brody swims alone, Johnny submerges her and drowns her. He then pursues Aurora, killing her with his, hooks. And then he throws her body off a cliff. Yeah, and as I said, the kills in this movie are so cool. I just wish that the characters were a bit better. If they put this much effort into writing the movie and giving us a bit more good dialogue, this would be one of my favourite films of the year so far. Sadly, it isn't, but it is up there. And yeah, Colt and Chris then discover Erin's body at the park ranger's station, and they flee upon seeing Johnny. And by nightfall, Johnny has approached the station, where the ranger explains to Colt and Chris that the locket, which is now being worn by Chris, is what keeps Johnny's soul at rest. The ranger apparently, just knows everything, so he momentarily subdues Johnny with a shotgun, and it paralyzes him for a second, but then Johnny's back up and he paralyzes him as Colt and Chris flee. Johnny then dismembers the ranger with a log, and Colt attempts to distract Johnny to trap him, but he's killed with an axe. Chris then leaves Johnny's locket dangling on a cash canister and flees into the woods. She's injured and she limps to a nearby road. And by dawn, a woman in a pickup truck stops and she offers to drive Chris to a hospital. She's trying to reassure her, the entire time, that she'll be fine. And the woman then recounts, how her brother survived a bear mauling in the same woods, a few years earlier. She then notices that Chris is like bleeding like really badly, like all over her seat. She's like, "Hey, these seats are custom, all right? You know, we gotta get that. We gotta get that bleeding to stop." So she tries to apply a tourniquet, but Chris is absolutely bloody terrified, and she just stares into the woods, thinking that Johnny's going to appear. But elsewhere, Johnny's locket has disappeared from the gas canister, which leaves a lot of questions, and that's where the film ends. And yeah, that's pretty much in a violent nature. It's kind of a weird movie, but it definitely sets up a sequel, you know? They could make these forever. We could just have thousands of kids just coming into the woods, stealing a locket, and then wabam. You got sequels. We got a whole bloody franchise here. I mean, I really hope that if they do make a good few sequels, it doesn't turn into the next Friday the 13th, where each sequel gets better and then it gets worse over time. I mean, if they introduce Johnny's long lost cousin in the next one, who has psychic powers and like has this magical knife that, no, not even a magical knife, a magical pair of scissors that she can stab Johnny with, please just don't make it. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a weird movie, and I do also enjoy it quite a bit. With that ending, they can definitely make a load of sequels. If they do, I hope it's less obnoxious with the characters and maybe a bit more likability with them. But yeah, that's In a Violent Nature, an ultra gory slasher film with a lot to like and a lot to hate. What do you guys think about the movie? Let me know in the comments below if you have seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, well, check it out. It's a load of fun, and at some point it could have been better, but you know, if they add the Shining reference in there where Johnny's breaking down the door and then they go, "It's Johnny!" or something like that, that would be great, but I don't think they'll do that. Maybe in the sequels, who knows. Until next time, thank you for watching this video, subscribe to the channel and like the video for some more reviews and movie news. Until next time, bye bye.